Hi, bookish people. Welcome to another episode of the Meet Your Author podcast, where we celebrate African authors and have bookish conversations. I'm your host, Rachel Chiza. And today on the podcast, I'm honored, excited to host Goretti Kyomuhendo, one of Uganda's leading novelists. She's the founder and director of the African Writers Trust, which promotes synergies and collaborative learning between African writers on the continent and in the diaspora. Her novels include The First Daughter, published in 1996, Secrets No More in 1999, which won the Uganda National Literary Award for Best Novel in the same year, and Waiting, published by the Feminist Press in New York in 2007 and translated into Spanish in 2022. Welcome, Goretti.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so for those who don't know Goretti, of course, I've given an amazing bio about her. And I think we could start on a lighter note. What does Goretti enjoy doing, away from the amazing work you do with African Writers Trust?
So apart from, I have to say that almost all my hobbies are related to my work, which I think is quite a bit boring because I read. I spend most of my time reading. But outside of that, I actually love farming. So I have a small farm in Kampala where I spend all my Saturdays. And when I think about it, I think it is still related to my work as a writer. Because when I grow beans, for example, I just love and enjoy to see them germinating, coming to life, just like we do with stories. Mm-hmm. So you start with a story, then you see it come to life, then you see it in print, then you see it sometimes being performed. So in a way it is related, but farming is my other passion.
Okay. So it's the role of writing, which is nurturing.
Which is nurturing
stories.
plants.
Yeah.
And then see them coming to life and then harvesting.
Yeah. Amazing. And it's not boring that your passions are related. I think it's exciting because you just keep around the same thing, but in different formats.
Well,
You're nurturing
I wish I could socialize more, which I really, really don't.
Okay.
I love dancing, I have to add.
Mm-hmm.
So I do enjoy dancing as well.
Okay. At least you can dance in your house.
I can dance in the club.
Okay. All right. So let's get into Whispers from Vera, because I think I read it the first time in 2019, I think. Yeah, the first edition. So tell us, what is Whispers from Vera, where it came from, what is it about? Because we've been seeing the social media platforms, and you were in Nairobi last year for a book fair, and you are speaking about Whispers. You are hosted in different bookshops. What is Whispers from Vera?
So Whispers from Vera is a simple, light-hearted story. Mm-hmm. And it follows the life of the main character, whose name is Vera, mm-hmm. as she juggles life as a woman, as an African woman, mm-hmm. as a wife, as a mother, and as a career woman.
Yeah.
So it is basically about that. How does she balance or don't balance these roles that she's trying to, as she charts out her life? I wrote it in a very light-hearted way, and most of my readers, after reading it, called me and say, "But I have finished it." I say, "Yes, you were meant to." Yeah, but I thought I would take some time. I thought it was going to take me maybe 3 days, and now I started it in the morning, and now I have finished it. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with his Whispers from Vera.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep it light. I wanted to keep it conversational. I wanted to keep it funny and humorous, something that you just sit down, lie down in a couch, or traveling, and just relax your mind, but at the same time get to be entertained, get to learn, get to see how women chart their lives when they have all these different roles to play.
Yeah. Okay, and let's just go back to the beginning, because last year Whispers from Vera celebrated 20 years in existence, and you then issued a new edition. So let's talk about the old edition and the new edition.
Yeah, so from the beginning, it started off as a column, which I used to write for, I think it was a weekly newspaper, way back in 1996. And the column was written in the epistolary form, or the letter form, for that matter. And it was between two sisters. One sister was based in Kampala, and the other sister was based in the village in Uganda. And they were still talking about these issues, comparing notes on relationships, on different types of work, on their children. And it ran for, I think, up to 1999. I think so, when the newspaper folded and closed its business. And at that point, I imagined, well, that is the end of this column. And when it ran, it was very, very popular. And people would read it and write back in the newspaper how they enjoyed it, or maybe slightly confused, so not knowing that there's more to come. So some would read it as a one-off. So, but where did this begin? What about what is coming next? Until people would pick up the idea that it's a weekly column. So when it ended, when the newspaper closed the office business and it stopped running, it had been followed by a number of other people apart from the readers. Monitor publications, which you used to publish in addition to the newspaper, they used to publish books and the business directory. So they approached me and said, well, they would want me to write it now as a novel, so they can publish it under their books segment. I think it was called Monitor Books. And at first I didn't warm up to the idea because I had done the column. It had run for about 3 years. But they convinced me and said, we think it would really work well as a novel. I didn't want to write the novel in the epistolary form. I'm not really a fan of letters when I'm writing a novel. So I had to find another genre to write it in. And I wrote it, and the voice as well. So I wrote it in the first voice, Vera's voice now, not writing to the sister in the village, but I incorporated all the sisters' voice and ideas into the novel. Mm-hmm. So that took me a short time to write, the shortest time it has taken me to write a novel, because I had the material, and I was just now trying to find the voice and a different form. In 2002, it was published as a novella, actually, because it was quite small. Yeah. Printed 2,000 copies, and my publishers were vindicated because they sold them off very, very quickly. Also, the shortest time I've sold so many copies of a novel. Sold out very quickly. Said, you see, we told you this story really resonates with Ugandan readers. Yeah, so that's the history of it. But unfortunately, Monitor Publications stopped that business segment of the Monitor books. They continued with the newspaper and probably the directory, but not the books. It wasn't viable for them, I think, as a business. So when they stopped, the novel went out of print around probably 2-3 years after it had been first published. Yeah. It went out of print, and I decided to reissue it 20 years later. Yeah.
Okay, that's very exciting. And I know that from some of the interviews you had last year, you mentioned that no book should be out of print, and that's one of the reasons or one of the motivations why you decided to reissue Whispers from Vera, because people are asking about it, but also because no book really should be out of print. 20 years, 30 years from now, we should be able to still read Whispers from Vera.
Yeah, we should, because if you look, a good example, I think, is Shakespeare's works. Romeo and Juliet, I think, I'm a hopeless romantic, as you know. So it is, if not the favorite play or work written by Shakespeare. And it was published, I think, 1590-something, 1592 or 94. That when it was first published.
Yeah.
Way back in the 16th century. We are now in the 21st. And I keep saying, so if it had gone out of print, books don't have a sell-by date.
Yeah.
Words don't expire. So why should it be out of print? So if it had gone out of print, new generations like us who came on the literary scene would have missed out on all that.
Yeah.
So that's my argument when I say books should not be out of print.
Yes.
The fact that a book is published, whether self-published or by mainstream publisher, the writer is saying something. There is a message in that, which we should not deny the subsequent generations from reading and accessing.
Absolutely.
So that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to have this book reissued.
Thank you so much for issuing it, because when I read that novella, I was so excited, and I was thinking, how come this book is out of print? Then, I wanted to own a copy for myself. So when you released the novel, I was just like, yes, now I get to have so many copies, and I get to at least gift most of my friends copies of Whispers, because I'm just like, you need to read this. Let's have conversation, because the book is still relevant to us now as it was when it was first published. The themes, everything in the book is, like you said, it's the modern woman just juggling and grappling with things that we are still grappling with today. Okay, so we've talked about why you've created a new edition, and I'm wondering, in terms of reception, what was it like back in 2002, and what has it been like now with new audiences, but also the old audiences?
So when it first came out in 2002, you have to remember there was no social media at that time.
Yes.
Which sounds strange now.
It does.
So there was no social media, and we depended on the traditional forms of media. For example, doing television interviews, radio interviews, and also at reviews in the newspapers. So that was all we depended on. And I think as a result of that, at that time, the reception of the book was mainly focused in Uganda.
Okay.
And probably the region, like Kenya, because I know it was selling in Kenya, but it wasn't going beyond that. So that was 2002. Now, 20 years later, there are all these technology, which I'm still grappling with myself. There is social media. Social media spreads the news instantly. So the book comes out and you are getting a message from a person based in Mexico, a friend, saying, oh, I didn't realize you have issued this book. I said, wow. Somebody based in Singapore. So for me, it has made the book travel more outside the country, more outside the region, as it did in 2002. I have a friend who sent me a picture of her Christmas tree during Christmas time. And on the space where they put gifts, there was Whispers from Vera.
Oh, that's amazing.
And she's based in Poland.
Wow.
And even me, I was surprised. I said, how did you get it? And she just laughed and said, Amazon. like you mean, it's that difficult? She just replied, Amazon, one word. I said that didn't happen in 2002. Yeah. So for me, the new modern technology and social media have made it travel way beyond the borders and confines of Uganda and the region.
Yeah. That's exciting. I mean, there's so many opportunities right now for books to travel. So I'm glad that Whispers now gets to move continents and have more people reading about it. And even if it's an African story, a Ugandan story, we know that any woman who reads it will definitely connect to Vera and the things that she's grappling with, because those ones they're not boundary based. They are, every woman will at least, struggle with marriage and falling in love, finding Prince Charming like Vera, friendships and all those dynamics.
Yeah, usually those are universal themes.
Absolutely. And so let's get into now the plot of the story, because we see when I was reading the novel, one of the things that really stood out for me was how right from the start, Vera is, she's mentioning how she wants a promotion. Like every time she throws it in there, I want a promotion. I want a promotion. But it's until so many years later that we see Vera almost getting the promotion. And yet when we look at her partner, Eric, it's like Eric doesn't have to wait. Things are happening for him. He's traveling. He's doing amazing things career-wise. And that got me wondering, can women have it all? And also that the question is, marriage beneficial to women or is it beneficial to men?
Wow. I think that is a personal matter. I would think so. It's a personal matter because I have seen women, I call them super women.
Yeah.
And I admire them from afar. I call them super women who have done all these things spontaneously.
Yeah.
Who have gone through the school system and achieved that level of training and then get into a marriage and then get 4 children and also an illustrious career.
Yes.
So I look at them from afar and say, that's a superwoman out there.
Yeah.
But I think it takes a lot more for a woman to achieve all that. It takes a lot more. And I'll give just an example. I didn't write about it in whispers, but from experience, from observing fellow women, that for you to get that promotion you are talking about, you have to put in the hard work.
Yes.
You have to put in the hours. You have to, these days, improve your academic qualifications, acquire more skills and all that. So that's effort that a woman needs to do. So I remember one time having an argument with a male journalist, and we're talking about how unfriendly the media workplace is to women. Yeah. That is so male, oriented, and women usually struggle with that. And he was just being pragmatic about it and saying, look, for you to get to that level, I think I was complaining why I've not seen a woman journalist interviewing a head of state. Somebody very high profile. Said, yeah, but because they need the skills, they need the expertise. I said, why can't they get that? Why is it always, when it is a high personality figure, it is a male journalist interviewing them?
Yeah.
And I remember the discussion revolving around gaining that experience. And we discussed how, in reality, if an opportunity presents itself and say, look, there's this conference in New York.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've got the information late. You need to be there in 2 days. Can you pack your bag and go to the airport? Very few women, if you've got into marriage, if you've got into children, into family, are going to pull off that. You start thinking of childcare. You start thinking if you're breastfeeding, how you're going to have the pump for the milk. The whole logistical thing around that is a nightmare. So the man will go back home, pack a suitcase, probably not, by the way, maybe 2 pairs of jeans, and off to the airport, and off to New York, and off to that conference. So it is more difficult for a woman to achieve than it is for a man.
Yes.
I think that's all I can say.
Yeah.
Because there are other women who achieve it. I don't know how easily, but it is more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a woman to achieve that.
Yeah, and I like that in the book that is really visible, and I think it's easy for any woman to relate to Vera, whether it's easy for you or it's difficult. It's so easy because all of us want the same thing. You want to have a great career. You want to go back to school, improve your qualifications, but there's such a high price at the end of the day.
It is the woman who gets pregnant for 9 months. So you are going to juggle all that, as I say, in when you are 8 months pregnant, it's quite difficult.
Yeah. And I like what you say, that it's a very personal question at the end of the day. Is marriage beneficial to women more than men? It's very personal because we all go in for different reasons.
And want different things.
Yeah, and want different things in life. Yeah, so point of view, Vera carries the story. As you said, it's first person narration. So Vera is, she's whispering things to us and saying, this and this is happening, or I've fallen in love, or really giving us updates as her friends. I consider myself Vera's friend because it's very intimate and conversational. So I loved just sitting and listening to Vera. And I'm wondering whether you could say that Vera is an unreliable narrator, because this is her perspective. We don't hear from anybody else. Everything we hear is Vera saying, oh, so and so said this person said that. I wonder why, first of all, you chose to use first person narration, and also whether you think for your character that she would come off as unreliable.
So the first person narrative voice, I use that to create that intimacy that you are referring to, because you feel very close to the narrator.
Yeah.
It's like she's speaking to you directly in your ear. Whispering actually is the word we use, that she's whispering to you. So for me, that was one of the main things I wanted to use, the first person narrative voice. But you also know first person is quite limiting in scope. It is limited to what that character can see, because this third person gives you that wide scope. The narrator can move in different spaces, can bring in the stories of others, but first person is quite limiting, and I knew the limitations when I chose to use it. And I knew it was going to be difficult, but I really wanted to create that intimacy. So the whole point of view is limited to what Vera sees, to what Vera feels, to how Vera reacts. But also, I wasn't very worried about that, because the whole point was to Vera to provide that insight through her eyes. So she provides an insight into the lives of other women. And is a kind of representative. So that's why you see her bringing in her friends' stories. So we get to see her friends' stories, her sister's story, her mother's story, her work colleagues. So there is a wide range of many other characters who we all get to see and hear through the eyes and voice of Vera, because that's what the first person narrative voice does, limits to what that voice can see and hear and experience and feel and all that. So for me, that was important, that Vera is able to do that. Unreliable narrator? No, I don't think so. Because as I say, it is not just her perceptions. It's not just her perspective. It is that of, there is a whole wide range of characters in Whispers from Vera, women. So there is, her mother-in-law, for example, as I say, her own mother. So she brings in, we get to see and hear all that from Vera. Yes, we don't see the other women speaking because it was centering Vera's voice, and the whispers. But she also tells us about her other friends, other women.
Yes, she does. Okay. And recently, when I posted about the book on my Bookstagram, someone inboxed me from Kenya and said that they had read the book and they realized that Ugandan writers really talk about sex openly. They don't shy away from it. And it got me thinking, is it true? Because it's just like, okay, from Jennifer, your work and Jennifer's work, yes, but then also I read Cassandra by Violet Barongi, and also one of her characters is really enjoying it, and so she talks about it freely. And I was wondering, because Vera, one of the things I love about Vera is that she's very confident. You want to be her friend. It's just like, yes, I'm going to be Vera's friend, because she's confident, she's open-minded, and so she also talks about sex openly when she meets, her partner, and she keeps, I actually counted, I think the first few pages, she talks about it 3 times, where she's like,
Wow.
oh my God, Eric has not asked for sex yet. Why?
I didn't realize.
So I'm wondering, would you say this is true, that Ugandan writers, or even for yourself, that we talk about sex openly, yet I would think that it being a taboo topic, we don't really see it much in books. So would you say that Ugandan writers are talking about sex openly, or even from your own writing? Is that what you are going for, to talk about this topic?
I think to say that Vera is really interested in sex is probably putting it out of context, because what Vera does is to articulate those feelings. It's not that the women who are not talking about it don't feel like she does, but that's why I gave her that voice. She articulates those feelings. So I didn't notice or realize that she mentioned sex in the first three.
Yeah, the first few pages.
But remember, when the novel opens, Vera is telling you, I have fallen in love with the man of my dreams. You know, it's a kind of opening line. So if we are talking about relationships, how can we avoid talking about sex? Part and parcel of a relationship between a man and a woman. So this woman may not articulate it and saying, but this man, we are dating. We go out, we have a good time, we date, and probably go back home, and he's not asked. Is he all right? Is everything okay? So that is an inner thought, which you may not be confident enough to communicate, to express, probably even with your best friends, because they might say, why is she pressurized? This woman really loves sex. But it's a thought that should run through your mind, because that's what relationships eventually do. People do have sex. So for Vera to start it off, as you say, she's very confident and says, well, what's going on? We love each other, we do this, we kiss. So what's the problem? So she just articulates it.
Yeah.
Not that other women don't have those inner feelings. I'm sure they do.
Yes.
I'm sure they wonder why is he, I think Vera uses the term gentlemanly. Why is he like that? Because sometimes we complain that men will ask for sex on the first date.
Yes.
So we complain. But this one has not. First, second, third, fourth, what is going on? So she just articulates probably what many women feel about it. Do Ugandans love talking about sex?
Ugandan
writers.
Do they love to openly talk about it?
Still, I think in context, because I know a number of people have come up in arms against my own writing, my past novels, that there's too much sex in these stories. And as I say, read out of context, yes, probably it is. It sounds like a lot, but it's always within context. Because Vera talks about this, but also other issues. She has issues with her family, with the siblings, as we know. So she talks about all this. I didn't want to leave out the sex bit because it's part and parcel of what we should be talking about.
Absolutely. And it's important anyway.
It is important. It is important. It really is. in relationships.
Yes, very important. And I've read your previous novels, The First Daughter, Secrets No More, Waiting, and all your characters seem to have what I would call our local names or our native names. But I noticed that in Whispers from Vera, it's not the case. We have Vera, we have Jacinta, we have Eric, and I just thought I was wondering to myself, is there a particular reason why you chose to use that direction?
I think it's the type of story that Whispers from Vera is. It's modern, it's contemporary, and it seemed suitable to use first English names because it suits the story.
Okay.
The context of the story. And my other novels you mentioned, they are set outside Kampala, for example. I think all the three are set outside Kampala. and probably it would sound out of place to use English names for these characters.
Yes.
So for me, it was the type of story that it was, modern and contemporary, going with English first names.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. And then for a language, I know that with Whispers from Vera, when I say it's our Ugandan story, it's because you use what we call now Uglish, or you use so many of the words that we use as we speak every day, so many of our slangs that anyone who is Ugandan, once they read the novel, they will know this must be a Ugandan writer. If in case they've never heard about you, they will definitely know it's a Ugandan writer. And I'm wondering why you chose to go in that direction.
So as you mentioned, that for me, this is a story where I wanted to center a Ugandan woman's lived experiences.
Yeah.
So that was very, very important that it comes across, that this is a Ugandan story. This is a story about a Ugandan woman. I didn't want to use generic words like African. She's Ugandan. Vera is Ugandan. She lives in Kampala. She works in Kampala. She's born and bred and raised. So I wanted to center all those experiences.
Yeah.
And it only is right for her to speak like we do.
Yes.
The way we speak, so the Uglish you talk about, then the slang, then the local language words that have become part and parcel of us.
Yes.
Actually, when I was writing it in 2002, it wasn't like that. But increasingly, and for me, I keep saying this is a very beautiful thing, increasingly we are incorporating local language words into our everyday speak.
Yes.
Remember, Whispers from Vera is written in that conversational everyday speak. So it felt appropriate that Vera speaks like us, like the Ugandans. We use the word banange quite a lot. A lot. And this cuts across cultures.
Yes.
It cuts across language groups. It cuts across probably age group. So it's only appropriate that Vera uses it a lot, just like we do. Then the other thing was about the intended audience. So this is a story whose primary audience is for young people aged between 25 and 40 years. And this is how most of these people speak.
Yes.
So I was also looking at that, my target audience. Is this something that can resonate with them? Is this something they can understand? And it was a learning experience for me as well, because I'm way outside that age group. So I would make it a point to listen to how these young people are talking, to try and understand some of these words that to me sometimes don't make sense. So I'd have to ask and say, so what do you mean when you say that? What do you mean when you say the sugar is done? What does that mean? Because that's how this intended age group speak, really.
Yes.
Yeah, so for me it was that.
Okay.
It was that. But also maybe I should add, it was also to reflect how much local language words, not only for this audience I've mentioned, but for example, the corporate world.
Yes.
I notice how billboards, the advertising on the billboards, use local languages.
Yeah.
And for me, as I say, it's so beautiful. It's like now we are finally accepting ourselves and feeling very comfortable in our own skins. Because that would not happen 20 years ago when I wrote the book. So if I go to Hoima, which is my birthplace, the billboards have an advert written in my language in Runyoro.
And it's so beautiful.
And I say, wow. So they have seen this is now an important audience. It is meant for the Banyoro who can speak Runyoro.
Yes.
You go to the side of Mbarara, they are written in Runyankole. You come in Uganda, they are written in Luganda. So for me, that was also reflecting all these new dimensions into the story of Vera.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's amazing because it really grounds the story
The
in our
story, yes.
Ugandanness. And for me, it was such a joy reading it. I was just like, this is our story. I get everything. I see myself. And remember when I sent you one of my friends' feedback after she had read it. She said she read it in one night. And she actually got her boss a copy of the book. Because she was just like, this is so interesting. This is our story. I relate with Vera. Yeah, so thank you for what you and Auntie Jennifer are doing for our writing.
I'm glad you appreciate that. Thank you too.
Yeah. And also the other thing I wanted to ask was, because I've read the novella and I've read the novel, I wanted to know why, because in the novella there's a glossary at the back of the book, and I noticed that in the novel it's not there. In the glossary you are explaining a few things in there, and I wonder if it was a publishing thing back then, and now there's no need. We know that there's so much politics around explaining things, and I wondered why in the novel you chose not to add the glossary.
The first edition, you are right, had a glossary, and as I said, because I felt the need to explain the local language words. And in this edition, the local language words are incorporated into the narrative, and they're not explained. They're just used in context, so you don't really need an explanation or a translation, because they're in context of the story. And some of them are just expressions. Ish! Ish! We say that a lot as Ugandans.
Yes.
So how would you translate that into English? Hey, banange! So how would you translate? So it is used in context that you know it is an exclamation of some sort.
Yeah.
But was it a global publishing, as you say, standard requirement? No, because as you said, there's a lot of politics around the language, about identity, about culture. So it wasn't, and that's why, for example, I italicize the local language words, because most of these novels by African writers, they now don't italicize them. So it's up to you to figure out. If you don't understand the word, it's up to you, because I signal and say, look, there's a local language here by using italics. So for me, I wasn't going for that politics of the language. You know, you have to understand what we are saying. When we read the modern classics, nobody used to tell us, what does this word mean? It was up to us. So for me, that was not my intention for this novel. I just wanted, my intention was for Vera to speak like we do. But I still signal by using italics.
Yes, you
for
do.
The local language words.
Yeah, and I think whoever is non-Ugandan and reads it, I think they'll be able to figure out, because everything is in context. And I remember one of my friends from Ghana, when she was planning to do a podcast episode on Jennifer's book, she called me and was asking me, could you please send me an audio pronouncing these names? And I liked that for her, because she wanted to get it right. And I think it could be the same thing with anyone who is reading the book and they have maybe a Ugandan friend. They could just ask, what does this mean, if in case they get lost along the way, or just Google, because the word may actually be on Google. They're like, I get what banange is. Bueno, ish. I think ish could be across all languages at this point. And it's easy to understand.
And if you notice, they are all very short.
Yes.
So there's no whole sentence in the local. They are short. They are used as a phrase or just as a word.
Yeah. And as you were rewriting Whispers from Vera, were you reading any particular authors, and did this affect the way you wrote the book now?
So when I was rewriting, I did read books. Not that I was not reading them because I'm rewriting Whispers from Vera. It was out of my routine that at any one point I'm reading a book. But I can think of some of the books that I read around that time, maybe during that year. And one of them is The Blessed Girl by Angela Makolwa.
Yeah.
And I also read Tomorrow I Become a Woman. I wanna saw
Odafen. Yeah.
And also Wanjiru Koinange's The Havoc of Choice. So I remember reading these books, and because it took me about a year to work through the edits of Whispers from Vera. And that's the time I was rewriting it. And for me, the first thing that jumped out, I think mainly from Tomorrow I Become a Woman, was the similarities with Whispers from Vera.
Yes.
I remember vividly a scene where the character in Tomorrow I Become a Woman goes to give birth, and she's in the hospital. And I remember I wrote this scene 20 years back in Whispers from Vera, when Vera goes to deliver and all that and what goes on. So I remember being struck by that similarity. And I was saying, this is very interesting. First of all, I wrote this 20 years ago, and now I'm reading it in another novel, a bit different, and another setting in Nigeria. So for me, that was very, very interesting. And also the character in the Blessed Girl.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember her name. She is, of course, more audacious, way, way more audacious than the Vera that I create.
Bontley,
yes. So, but I remember looking at those similarities. Is this something I would recommend to the reader?
To authors.
To the authors.
Yeah, to read other people while they write their work.
Still, this is a personal choice, because I know some writers who actually do that. If they choose a theme and a topic, they want to read everything that has already been written about it. So I know writers who do that. Collect all these books, a kind of research, really, like an academic would do, and read all of them. And they will tell you, I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to write what has already been written. If it has, I want to take a different angle. So personally, I don't do that. If it happens when I'm writing and I read a story, I read a novel and find a similarity there, so I'm more intrigued by that somebody has written something I'm planning to write or I'm writing. But also, sometimes it comes from the publishers for their marketing purposes. So it will come from publishers. If you submit a manuscript, and then they see the similarities, because, look, Rachel, everything has been written about. None of us is writing anything new. That is the simple fact. Everything. So it is how we write it, from what angle. But it's not that you are writing something new. Everything is already written about. So usually the publishers, sometimes they will write to you and say, are you aware of this story, of this novel, of this writer? They might even push you to say, can you read it? Or they might point out the similarities. And for them, why they are doing that, it is for their marketing purposes. Because you've seen novels where they say, readers of so-and-so will enjoy this book.
Yes.
So they are trying to direct readers, to direct sales. And say, if you liked this reader, this writer, you are going to love this. So sometimes the publishers are the ones who push writers to read what has been written about. But they might also suggest and say, well, if you're writing an immigration story, it has already been done like this and this and this. So we really need a fresh angle for us to be able to publish it.
Yes.
Or if you are writing it like this, want you to take slightly direction that is a bit similar to this book that has sold so well. So they can use it to advertise and publicize your book and say, the readers who enjoyed this book, this is also your kind of book. And you've also seen, if you're buying a book online, Amazon does that for you.
Yes, it does.
Because they can see your taste.
Yeah.
So they say you might be also interested in these books. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think also book reviewers, say on Bookstagram, when people ask, after we've read a book, you'll be like, okay, if you've read Whispers from Vera, I think you'll also enjoy this book
like
and
this.
that book. Yeah, so I guess it's all part of the publishing system.
It is, yes.
Yeah,
it is.
we need all the recommendations, and I like what you said, that everything has been written about. It's usually just fresh perspectives.
Yeah.
And I like that with Tomorrow Become a Woman and Whispers from Vera, when you mentioned that you saw the similarities,
The scene, yeah.
I like that, because then it hit me that books are always in conversation.
Yeah.
You read, and rightly so, Tomorrow Become a Woman is so close to Whispers in so many ways. So whoever, Whispers is a lighter version. Excuse me, Whispers is a lighter version of Tomorrow Become a Woman, which is so heavy. Whispers is a breeze. So people who are listening, if you've read Tomorrow Become a Woman, please read Whispers from Vera. And so let's get into the points of sale. Where, of course, in Uganda, where should people find the book? And then also beyond, people who are not living in the country, where can they get Whispers from Vera?
So if you are in Uganda, the book is available at a restock. I'm sure everybody would know where a restock is. But you can also reach us directly as the publishers, African Writers Trust. I think checking on the website rather than giving a telephone number might be easier.
Yes, the website.
If you just Google African Writers Trust, all the information of how to get the book are there. Then if you are outside Uganda, we have many outlets. In Nairobi, it is selling very well and has been stocked in many of the main bookshops. So there's one called Cheche Bookstore, there is Somanami, there is Prestige right in the city center of Nairobi. There is another one called Ikitabu. They are based in Westlands. So Nairobi, it is very easily available. We are trying to get it into South Sudan. We are just about to have a bookshop stocking them. So in the region, it is easily available. It is also now in digital form. So Ikitabu, also based in Nairobi, have done the digital form of Whispers from Vera, so you can buy it online. Then it's also available on Amazon. As I told you, my friend in Poland bought it from Amazon. So on Amazon, it is available. And it's also available through a distribution company, which is based in the UK. But they are distributing to Western Europe. They are distributing to Canada. They are also distributing in China and Japan.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you do a simple Google search, it will
Amazing.
show you all these distribution channels. Yeah.
Amazing.
So it is really readily available.
Yes, readily available. And it's an amazing book. So go out, purchase the book if you haven't already. Buy it for your friends. Valentine's is coming up, so be sure to send someone
It's on
a
discount
copy.
for Valentine.
Oh, amazing. So be sure to get a copy of Whispers from Vera. And with everything that Goretti has talked about the book, I can't praise it enough. That's why I thought I should bring the author to, just talk about the book and you hear it from her. And so, thank you, Goretti, for sitting with me today on this hot afternoon in Kampala.
Thanks, Rachel, for having me. Thanks for this support.
Do you have any last words that you would like the listeners to, get or know about any upcoming projects on your end?
So as at African Writers Trust, we do a lot of work in supporting the growth of writers, how to improve their craft. So we do a number of training workshops. We normally work with practicing writers. So writers who are doing it, not writers who are just thinking about writing, who have had this dream about becoming a writer. So we want somebody who is practicing. And by practicing, we mean, do you have a project, a manuscript project that you're working on, where you feel stuck, where you feel you need guidance? So those are the writers we normally work with. And we are planning for our next training to be in May. So the first training of this quarter, we have already finished. But our next training will be in May. Again, check out our website, That's where all the information is.
Okay.
Just a simple Google search will lead you to African Writers Trust.
Yes, so you've heard it from Goretti. Check out africanwriterstrust.org and find all the information about the bookshop, the books they're selling, but also about the training programs for writers in case you want to improve your writing this year. Commit to following the website and get all the information. Thank you again, Goretti, for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. Follow at Meet Your Author on X and Meet Your Author Podcast on IG. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to enjoy a bookish ride.